Andre Drummond is going to be a huge variable this season, because it's not only the 10 to 15 minutes he'll play. I shouldn't say 10 to 15. I'd say he'll get a solid 15 when Joel plays, potentially more based on, if things are going well, Joel gets some extra time on the bench, he'll play. Absolutely the 25, 30 minutes he's going to get when Joel sits. So that'll be if he's hurt, if he's sitting on the second night of a back-to-back, if it's a 3 games in 4 nights scenario, as we were talking about on the schedule release show, if it's an 18 games in 30 nights scenario, who the hell knew the NBA was even planning around those? But then also they get to the playoffs. We've seen time and time again, anytime Joel is not on the floor, they bleed points, they lose minutes, and that becomes so critical. And so no matter what point of the season they're at, Andre Drummond is going to play a big role in the success of this team. Now, what I would say is that it's never been just a backup center problem, right? Part of the problem is, hey, you don't have the third guy or the supporting cast to make a backup unit without Joel work, because Joel's a unique talent. You build around him. And when those guys with those specific skill sets are not next to Joel, things might go haywire. But because they have Paul George, who fits with basically anybody, because they have this additional wing talent, because Tyrese Maxey has now elevated himself to, saw it all last season, when Joel's healthy and he's able to lead the what we'll call the main lineups, the starting lineups and the Embiid heavy bench groups, Tyrese at the start of those second and fourth quarters, he's throwing a haymaker. He's separating. This is not just, hey, we try not to lose by 15 points. In many cases, the Sixers were ending games with Joel on the bench and Tyrese going on like a 6 to 8 point run. Game is over. So Drummond is going to be part of those groups now. And they're not just going to rely on him for the rebounding, although that will be a huge, huge component of why he's here and how he's going to help this team succeed. They're going to need him for some secondary playmaking. He's a decent, if a little bit adventurous passer. They don't have a lot of good passers on this team. And so he's going to be used, at least at times, as a little bit of a hub to, guys will cut off of him. He's going to hit cutters. He's going to hit 3-point shooters, whatever he needs to do. And just the night-to-night production from him is going to be so important. And we've seen it with him already. He's able to go from that 10, 15, 18, whatever it is, minute guy to 30-minute, maybe like 15 to 20-point scorer on a given night if they need him to do that. That's a really hard thing to do. It is impossible to step in Joel Embiid's shoes. But the more stability he gives them, if he's just, one, able to stay healthy, which knock on wood, he's generally a relatively healthy player. If he stays healthy, he offers consistent rebounding. If the defense is just good enough, he will have the pieces around him to have a really successful season. So do I think he's going to be the fourth best player? No. Do I think he could be super important? And do I think his success could help define this season? Absolutely.
He will certainly be the fourth most important player when he's starting, because you need those 30 minutes from him of consistency, staying out of foul trouble, etc. The minutes that, as Prophet One says, I'm going to miss B-ball Paul, but because when Embiid would come off the floor and how they would lose those games a lot of times, it's about winning those non-Embiid minutes. So when you do bring him back, and people were so upset, like Real Time is talking about when he left and went to the Nets, that hurt. Now, we don't know what it would have been like in the playoffs because he hasn't been a great playoff performer.
No, he's been benched in the playoffs.
But that being said, that's a good option to at least go to and have that. So where he's going to be key is the offensive rebound, giving them second chance opportunities in that way. Of course, the defensive rebounding and giving them the opportunity to get out of that end of the floor and even start some breaks, as long as he's not dribbling and going up the floor and doing all that stuff that he does, which is always fun and comical. And it's a good video to look at and laugh at from afar. It's not going to be so fun when we're talking about they lost by 5 points, and that was probably a little area there. But that's just a small part of where things can go bad. But for him overall, I mean, he's just a good pickup. Is why they gave him the money they gave him. Why they went into their
calorie space on him.
Their salary cap space to give him the money and not just a regular standard 2-year minimum deal annually for that player. He's going to be really big because you have to win those non-league minutes when he's off the floor and certainly when he is, in fact, starting. Because what if Adem Bona is not ready for minutes?
And I don't think he will be. And that's not a criticism of Adem Bona.
It's not. It's just more of,
he's a raw big man.
Yeah, and is it gonna be going into those small ball lineups where you have KJ Martin playing the 5, or Yabusele is maybe stealing some minutes for him when he comes off the floor, starting for Joel Embiid? He's going to be big. And if he's consistent, playing with some of the players that he is already familiar with, like Paul George, like Reggie Jackson out there because of their familiarity with the Detroit Pistons in the time that they were there, he's going to be key. Playing with Tyrese Maxey, who he has already done so with, he's going to be big. And that's one that we had to bring up because that's why they gave him the money. That's why people were upset when he was traded in that deal, because he was good enough. He was good enough, and he was still getting you 20 games and starting for Joel Embiid and having those big rebounding nights. That's how good he still is. I mean, if the game hasn't changed the way that it was, the guy would probably still be a starting center.
Right. He'd be making a lot more money in a bigger role.
Yes.
Look, Andre is a limited player in many ways, right? He doesn't shoot. He's not a good free throw shooter. So if he gets those offensive rebounds, you can hack him and force him to get his business done there. He's not a switch defender. So you're going to have him play drop coverage against pick and rolls. You want to keep him near the rim. A lot of that is also to take advantage of the rebounding. But pure skill set wise on this team, they need what he does, which is vacuum up rebounds. And if the rest of the guys are able to do their job, I'm not saying that Andre is going to be Joel as a rim protector, but if you funnel guys toward him effectively, if you, as I said yesterday, if you guard the yard, if you stay in front of your man and you force reasonably contested shots, I feel good about Andre Drummond against basically whoever the other team has in the paint, around the paint to rebound. And because that's such a question mark for this group, having one of those guys that I think is on a very short list of players that are elite rebounders all by themselves, I think he can solve a lot of their problems in the regular season. Once we get to the playoffs, I don't have a lot of confidence that he's going to be able to stay on the floor because of how teams can potentially attack him in space. But to get through 82, to buy Joel Embiid games off and not feel like, well, we're just punting this game, it's over. Like it's a Sixers loss. We don't have to watch the game. We don't have to talk about it. You don't go into these games thinking that, in large part because you have a big 3 and you have a bigger roster. But Andre giving you that stability and that production every night. And I think people have probably lost sight of him a little bit over the last couple of years. Chicago has been a really irrelevant team. You could argue he's gotten even better in this backup role since leaving Philadelphia. He's had good seasons behind Nick Vucevic, and on the off night where Vuce is hurt or Vuce is out for whatever reason, Drummond has filled in admirably. So he comes in with this good attitude, with a skill set that works, and it seems like he's in a position to succeed. So I have high hopes for him this year.